In 1980, an American man walked into a post office, bought a stamp, and mailed a letter that would change everything. The recipient? The United Nations. The message? A formal claim of ownership over the entire moon. This wasn't a joke, a publicity stunt, or the ramblings of someone who'd lost touch with reality. This was Dennis Hope, and he was about to become the self-proclaimed president of the moon, sell millions of acres of lunar real estate, and eventually declare war on his own celestial territory. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. We'd love to know how far this story is reaching. If you love strange but true history, consider subscribing. It helps us keep sharing stories you won't hear in a classroom. The 1980s were a fascinating time for space law. The Cold War had driven both superpowers to plant flags and claim territories, but when it came to outer space, things got complicated. In 1967, the Outer Space Treaty was signed by major world powers, including the United States and Soviet Union. This treaty explicitly stated that no nation could claim sovereignty over celestial bodies like the moon or planets. But here's where things get interesting. The treaty was very specific about nations, countries, governments, sovereign states. It said nothing about individuals. This wasn't an oversight that anyone particularly worried about at the time. After all, who could possibly have the resources or audacity to claim ownership of the moon? The legal landscape of the early 1980s was ripe for someone with enough creativity and determination to exploit this loophole. Property law, dating back centuries, generally followed the principle that unclaimed land could be claimed by individuals through a process called homesteading or adverse possession. But these laws had never been tested beyond Earth's atmosphere. Dennis Hope was living in California, working various jobs and struggling financially. But he was also someone who read legal documents carefully and thought outside conventional boundaries. When he discovered this apparent gap in international space law, he saw an opportunity that no one else had noticed. The stage was set for one of the most audacious legal experiments in human history. A man with nothing to lose was about to challenge the entire framework of how we think about ownership, sovereignty, and the cosmos itself. Dennis Hope wasn't a lawyer, a space scientist, or a wealthy entrepreneur. He was an ordinary American who had worked as a car salesman and ventriloquist, among other jobs. But in 1980, facing financial difficulties, he began studying property law with the intensity of someone who desperately needed a solution. His research led him to a startling realization. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 prohibited nations from claiming celestial bodies, but it said absolutely nothing about private individuals. Armed with this discovery, Hope crafted a letter that would go down in the annals of unusual legal history. On November 22, 1980, Hope mailed his letter to the United Nations, the United States government, and the Soviet Union. In formal legal language, he declared his intention to claim ownership of the moon based on the apparent loophole in international law. He gave these governments a reasonable period to respond with any legal objections. The silence was deafening. No government responded to challenge his claim. In Hope's interpretation, this silence constituted legal acceptance of his ownership rights. Whether this interpretation had any validity in actual law was debatable, but Hope was convinced he had just become the legal owner of Earth's only natural satellite. What happened next would transform this quirky legal experiment into a decades-long enterprise that captured imaginations worldwide. Hope didn't just want to own the moon, he wanted to do something with it. And that something would make him either a brilliant entrepreneur or the most persistent dreamer in modern history. With what he believed to be legal ownership established, Dennis Hope did what any property owner might do. He started selling parcels of his land. In 1980, he founded the Lunar Embassy Commission and began offering 1-acre plots of lunar real estate for $20 each plus shipping and handling. The early response was modest but encouraging. Hope's first customers were friends, family members, and curious individuals who saw it as either a novelty gift or a fascinating conversation piece. Each purchase came with an official-looking certificate of ownership, complete with Hope's signature and the seal of his lunar government. But as word spread, something remarkable happened. The concept captured people's imaginations in ways Hope had never anticipated. celebrities began purchasing lunar real estate. According to Hope's records, customers eventually included former presidents, Hollywood stars, and thousands of ordinary people who wanted to own a piece of the cosmos. The business model was surprisingly sophisticated. Hope established different zones on the moon with varying prices. Premium locations near the Apollo landing sites commanded higher prices, while remote areas of the lunar far side were more affordable. He created detailed lunar maps, property deeds, and even a lunar constitution. Critics immediately questioned the legitimacy of these sales. Legal experts pointed out that Hope's interpretation of international law was highly questionable at best. But Hope had an answer for every objection. No government had challenged his claim, no court had ruled against him, and he was providing exactly what he promised: official documentation of lunar property ownership, according to his legal framework. The question remained: were customers buying into a brilliant legal experiment, an elaborate joke, or something else entirely? Dennis Hope wasn't content to simply sell lunar real estate. He wanted to govern it properly. By the mid-1980s, he had established what he called the Galactic Government, with himself as the first president of the moon. This wasn't a casual title. Hope took his governmental responsibilities seriously. He drafted a lunar constitution that established democratic principles for his celestial territory. The document outlined individual rights, governmental structure, and legal procedures for lunar citizens. Hope created a currency called deltas, designed lunar stamps, and even established a rudimentary taxation system for property owners. The galactic government maintained detailed records of all property sales, established lunar embassies in various Earth locations, and created official government positions. Hope appointed lunar ambassadors, established a lunar senate, and developed protocols for future lunar colonization. This wasn't mere fantasy. Hope invested significant time and resources into creating legitimate governmental infrastructure. He studied constitutional law, researched governmental best practices, and designed systems that could theoretically function if lunar colonization ever became reality. The Lunar Constitution guaranteed freedom of speech, religion, and assembly to all lunar citizens. It established environmental protection standards for the moon and created legal frameworks for future development. Hope envisioned lunar cities, space tourism, and eventually a thriving civilization on humanity's first extraterrestrial territory. But perhaps the most audacious aspect of Hope's lunar government was yet to come. In a move that surprised even his most dedicated followers, the president of the moon was about to declare war on his own territory. In a twist that no one saw coming, Dennis Hope's most bizarre chapter began in the 1990s when he declared war on the moon itself. This wasn't a metaphorical conflict or a publicity stunt. Hope issued formal declarations of war against his own lunar territory. The reasoning behind this unprecedented action stemmed from Hope's growing frustration with Earth government's continued refusal to formally recognize his lunar sovereignty. In his view, if Earth's nations wouldn't acknowledge his peaceful ownership of the moon, perhaps a state of war would force them to take notice. Hope's declaration of war included specific military objectives, strategic plans, and even recruitment efforts for his lunar defense forces. He established ranks within his lunar military, created battle plans for defending lunar territory against potential Earth invasions, and developed what he called interplanetary warfare protocols. The media response was exactly what Hope had hoped for: widespread coverage, interviews, and renewed interest in his lunar enterprise. News outlets around the world reported on the man who had declared war on the moon, treating it as either an amusing human interest story or a cautionary tale about the limits of individual ambition. But Hope's war declaration served a deeper purpose than mere publicity. It was a legal strategy designed to force governmental recognition of his claims. In international law, only sovereign entities can declare war. By declaring war on the moon, Hope was asserting his governmental authority and challenging other nations to either accept or formally dispute his sovereignty. The war lasted several years in Hope's official records, though no actual military actions occurred. Eventually, Hope declared victory and established a peace treaty with himself, officially ending the conflict and returning the moon to peaceful civilian governance. If you're enjoying this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to Quick Historians. We're just getting to the most fascinating part of Dennis Hope's lunar adventure. The question that haunted Dennis Hope's entire lunar enterprise was simple. What was he really doing? Was this an elaborate business scheme, a sophisticated hoax, a legal experiment, or something else entirely? From a business perspective, Hope's operation was undeniably successful. Over the decades, he reportedly sold millions of acres of lunar real estate, generating substantial revenue from his $20 plot sales. He employed staff, maintained offices, and created a functioning business enterprise based entirely on lunar property sales. But the legal foundation remained questionable. International law experts consistently argued that Hope's interpretation of the Outer Space Treaty was incorrect. They pointed out that while the treaty didn't explicitly mention individuals, it was intended to prevent any form of territorial claims on celestial bodies. Several legal scholars published papers debunking Hope's legal theories. Yet Hope had compelling counterarguments. No government had ever formally challenged his claims in court. No international legal body had ruled against him. His customers received exactly what they paid for: official certificates of lunar ownership according to his legal framework. From Hope's perspective, the burden of proof lay with his critics. The hoax theory suggested that Hope never truly believed his own legal arguments and was simply exploiting people's fascination with space ownership. But this interpretation struggled to explain Hope's decades of consistent behavior, his investment in governmental infrastructure, and his apparent genuine belief in his legal position. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility was that Hope was conducting a real-world experiment in the boundaries of property law, sovereignty, and human imagination. Whether intentionally or not, he had created a fascinating case study in how legal systems respond to unprecedented situations. The truth probably contained elements of all these interpretations, making Dennis Hope one of history's most enigmatic legal entrepreneurs. Over the decades, Dennis Hope's lunar empire became something much larger than a simple business venture. It evolved into a cultural phenomenon that revealed fascinating aspects of human nature and our relationship with the cosmos. Public reaction varied dramatically. Some people dismissed Hope as a harmless eccentric, while others saw him as either a brilliant entrepreneur or a dangerous fraud. Celebrity customers helped legitimize the enterprise in popular culture, while legal experts continued to question its foundations. The story took on mythological qualities as it spread through media coverage, word of mouth, and eventually internet discussions. Details became exaggerated, motivations were simplified, and Hope himself became a larger-than-life character in the public imagination. Interestingly, Hope's lunar enterprise attracted serious attention from space law researchers who saw it as a valuable case study. His exploitation of the apparent loophole in international space law highlighted genuine gaps in legal frameworks governing space exploration and commercialization. The lunar property sales also revealed something profound about human psychology. Despite the questionable legal basis, customers genuinely treasured their lunar certificates. These pieces of paper represented something deeper than property ownership. They symbolized humanity's dreams of space exploration and cosmic belonging. Hope's story shared similarities with other historical eccentrics who challenged conventional boundaries. Like Emperor Norton Byrne of San Francisco, who declared himself Emperor of the United States in 1859, Hope created his own reality and convinced others to participate in it. The difference was scale and persistence. While Norton's imperial delusions lasted about 20 years until his death, Hope's lunar government operated for decades, adapting to changing times and maintaining its unique position in the space between law, business, and imagination. As we look back on Dennis Hope's extraordinary journey from struggling car salesman to self-proclaimed president of the moon, we're left with profound questions about the nature of ownership, authority, and human ambition. Hope's story illuminates the arbitrary nature of many legal and social constructs we take for granted. Property ownership, governmental authority, and even sovereignty itself are ultimately human creations based on collective agreement. Hope challenged these assumptions by creating his own legal framework and convincing others to participate in it. Whether Hope was right or wrong about lunar property law may be less important than what his experiment revealed about the gaps in our legal systems. As space commercialization becomes reality, the questions Hope raised about individual ownership of celestial bodies have gained new relevance. His declaration of war on the moon represents perhaps the ultimate expression of individual ambition colliding with cosmic reality. It was simultaneously absurd and profound. A man asserting military authority over a celestial body 240,000 miles away, yet doing so within a logical framework of his own creation. The legacy of Dennis Hope's lunar empire extends beyond property sales or legal theories. It reminds us that the boundaries between serious and ridiculous, legal and illegal, possible and impossible, are often much blurrier than we assume. Sometimes it takes someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove to show us where those boundaries really lie. In the end, Hope's story is fundamentally human, a tale of ambition, creativity, and the eternal drive to claim our place in an infinite universe, even if that place is just 1 acre at a time. What do you think about Dennis Hope's incredible lunar adventure? Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. We love seeing how far these amazing historical stories travel. If you enjoyed learning about the man who declared war on the moon, subscribe to Quick Historians for more incredible tales from history that you definitely won't find in any textbook. Until next time, keep exploring the strange and wonderful stories that make our world so fascinating.